What is a Cherokee citizen, and then what is being Cherokee by blood, because there is a difference in the two categories. To a Cherokee, a person who had a clan, who could fluently speak the language or practice our traditional life ways, was considered a Cherokee. The amount of blood had no influence on a person's identity. You were either Cherokee or you were not Cherokee, and that was the only two races that we recognized. So if my mother's Cherokee, I'm Cherokee, the father's sort of obsolete, because we don't take into consideration any inheritance from that individual. Now, state rights over the Cherokees, we'll talk about under state law, any Cherokee or Native American who remained in the East and did not remove on the Trail of Tears were considered a person of color. A person of color could not vote, nor could they own land. So part of the option during the removal era was you could take a reserve, become a U.S. citizen, and give up your citizenship as a Cherokee, and you did not have to remove on the Trail of Tears. So some took that option, but immediately found out that they were in this category of a person of color, so they lost their land. It was an unwritten law that any Cherokee who left the confines of the Cherokee Nation and was gone for more than 6 months relinquished their rights as Cherokee. And later it would be written into our Constitution as a law as part of the Cherokee Nation. So if you left and didn't come back within 6 months and you were most likely in the United States, you were considered a citizen of the United States and no longer a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. There was an option the council would set up to hear cases where people returned, and if you made a good plea and they agreed with you, they could readmit you as a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. There was the group who left, a warring group that you may have heard of called the Chickamauga, and they would leave the Cherokee as early as the 1790s and became part of the Boot Hill area of people who lived in Missouri in 1794. They moved to that location while it was still French territory, trying to get away from the encroachment of the British who were moving into our territories. And as a result, though, they gave up their rights as citizens and would become known as the Chickamauga. Cherokee who chose to live as a U.S. citizen or live outside the U.S. relinquished their rights as a Cherokee. The Treaty of 1835 foretold of the final removal of the Cherokee, which would become known as the Trail of Tears, or the Trail where they cried. And by March of 1839, the entire populace that were considered citizens of the Cherokee Nation were now living in the new Indian Territory. So those who had stayed behind, those who didn't follow with the nation, were no longer part of the nation. They had given up their rights as citizens, for whatever the reason might be.
You ain't got the answers, man.
We're not citizens anymore, like I had said. And most federal and state records, such as a birth record or a death record, marriage and census records, they would have no designation for Cherokee, Native American, or Indian as a race. Only until the U.S. census of 1870 or 1880 was there a designation for an Indian under race. Most of these censuses do not list anyone as I for Indian, and 99% of the race is listed as W for white. There's the distinction of B for black and MU for mulatto, or CH for Chinese in Western states. Those people who lived in other states outside the Cherokee Nation in Indian Territory were listed as W for white on census records. Being Cherokee by blood to the United States, especially if a person did not live in the Cherokee Nation, was just the same as being any nationality lumped into one, an American. Americans were generally considered citizens of the United States and not the Cherokee Nation. So, if you lived anywhere, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, Colorado, you were a citizen of the United States and of that state. But those in Indian Territory were not citizens of the United States, and they were still citizens of the Cherokee Nation. Two distinctions, two different governments. Anyone could live in the Cherokee Nation and not necessarily be a citizen of the nation. We had intermarried whites, so if you look at our census or our records, it'll be IW. We had AW, which was adopted whites.
You know your name
we
ain't on
adopted
the
them,
goddamn list.
and they would be allowed to vote, and they were considered citizens by our people at that time. By the U.S. Census of 1900, 90% of the Cherokee Nation population was considered United States citizens and not Cherokee. We were overrun with so many people, non-Cherokee and whites, that there were, 3 times to 4 times sometimes by population more people who were not Cherokee than there were living there illegally. But the United States really had no way of enforcing keeping them out. There was no border control or nothing to keep people from coming going as they pleased.
Tell them what you told me. Tell them what you told me, that you grew up in the YT world and that even you were able to get your tribal IDs.
Yeah, but the thing I wanted to, everybody knows too, is you can buy your way into the tribe. It's not hard to get a tribal ID, and it kind of sucks sometimes that, the reason I'll say this is, you see this Rosewood Sioux tribe one, that I'm affiliated with? I have a buddy that is